Are you dreaming of living in Portugal? Thinking of sun, safety, cheap wine, a truly first-class European paradise? Then sit down and brace yourself, because Portugal has become a hotel for rich foreigners. 1 in 10 houses is empty, and the people are sleeping on the streets. The country sold its soul for 500,000 euros, turning homes into investments. What was meant to be a refuge became a showpiece. Confused? You're thinking, what do you mean? I don't get it. Relax, I'm going to explain it to you bit by bit, and what you are about to hear will leave you completely outraged. So, paradise turned into a nightmare. My friend, there's only one truth. Portugal has transformed into a luxury product, though exclusively for wealthy foreigners. If the country was once seen as Europe's accessible paradise, with mild climate, cheap wine, and affordable rent, today the reality is different. Living in Portugal is expensive, very expensive. You want a coffee? A flat white? 17 reis? Want to rent a studio in Lisbon? 900 euros a month, and that's if you're lucky. And if you want to buy an apartment, then get ready to sell a kidney. But what's most shocking isn't the price, it's the contradiction. How is it that in a country where more than half the population earns less than 1,000 euros a month, the rent for a small one-bedroom apartment can reach 2,000 euros in the capital center? Who can afford that? The answer is simple. The average Portuguese can't, and they're being pushed out. Today, living in Lisbon, Porto, Cascais, or even in that fishing village that became a hotspot for rich surfers, has become a privilege for Nordic retirees or digital nomads with a European salary. And the Portuguese? They're moving far away, sharing houses, returning to their parents' homes in their 30s, or even worse, literally sleeping in their cars. Portugal has become a very popular and fashionable destination. However, beyond the pretty pictures on social media, there lies a silent crisis, a housing crisis that is already at its breaking point. And if you consider this an overstatement, just hold on until I reveal every single detail about what is really going on. Second, how was Portugal sold? To truly grasp this entire situation, we must go back in time. Portugal was broke, almost on the brink of bankruptcy. In 2008, the crisis came. In 2011, the government fell, and the country had to ask for help from the European Union and the IMF. It received a bailout of 78 billion euros, but there was one condition: open up the economy to foreign capital. That's when the brilliant idea came up. Let's sell the country, legally. The Golden Visa was born, the famous Golden Visa. If you were a foreigner and purchased a property for 500,000 euros, you'd acquire the right to reside in Portugal. It was that simple, like a Black Friday, but for a whole country. And it didn't end there. Portugal also offered tax exemption for foreign retirees. Imagine, you live in a cold, rainy country, with taxes on the very air you breathe. Then you discover that in Portugal there's sun, wine, codfish, and you still don't pay taxes? My friend, it became a party. Norwegians, Swedes, Britons, French, and people from all over the world rushed to purchase homes in Portugal. But not for living, rather safekeeping, as if property were a bank vault. And the outcome? The real estate market boomed. A house transformed into an investment, not a place to reside. In less than 10 years, the price per square meter in Lisbon more than doubled. An apartment that cost 1,000 euros per meter started costing 2,500. And so the Portuguese were forced out of their own neighborhood. The city became like a movie set, beautiful on the outside, but empty within. Portugal was, in fact, sold, not in a figurative sense, but literally. 3. The visa that inflated the country. On paper, it seemed perfect. More investment, more money circulating, more jobs. In practice, it became a nightmare disguised as success. Do you know what the rich foreigner did with the 500,000 euro property? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. He would purchase the house, refurbish the exterior, apply a fresh coat of paint, and then leave it unoccupied. It was simply to satisfy the visa requirement, as if a home were a golden ticket to Europe rather than a place for people to reside. The outcome? The entire market started revolving around this magic number, 500,000 euros. It didn't matter if the house was old, moldy, or had plumbing from the 1950s. The lowest value surged to 500,000. And who were these properties aimed at? The average Portuguese person? No, they were intended for the international investor. Meanwhile, from outside the display window, the Portuguese middle class observed prices climbing without end. And the worst part, the houses were there, empty. Indeed, my friend, Portugal established an invisible, quiet, sophisticated bubble, leaving its own citizens excluded, forced to pay dearly for what was once their own home. And then you think, but couldn't they just build more houses? Hold on, we're getting to that. Because the problem isn't just about housing shortages, it's the underlying logic of it all. Fourth, the tourism bubble. While wealthy foreigners bought homes to keep empty, others were merely tourists passing through. And so Portugal became a European adult Disneyland. In 2010, the country received 10 million tourists a year. Today, that figure has surged to 20 million, a doubling of the country's population every single year. That's an enormous number of people for such a tiny nation. With such a massive influx of visitors, can you imagine what occurred next? Airbnb became the rule, housing the exception. Entire apartments began to be withdrawn from the residential market for conversion into short-term rentals. You know that small one-bedroom apartment that could be rented for 600 euros to a family? Now it yields 150 euros per night from a tourist. You do the math and see. In 2020, 11% of homes in major cities were already short-term rentals. Today, that number is nearly 60%. In Lisbon, rental prices rose by 57%. In Porto, 61%. In the Algarve, 51%. And what about salaries? They remained stagnant. Did tourism create jobs? Yes, it did. But they are all seasonal, low-paying, and with 3-month contracts. It's a gig, not a career. It's survival, not stability. And so, Portugal has transformed into what it is today, essentially a European summer theme park. Cheap drinks, clean beaches, beautiful people, and a populace working for mere crumbs to sustain this celebration. But wait a minute. Who is truly sustaining whom? Because what was supposed to save the economy is turning into a mass eviction sentence. 5. Portugal is no longer for the Portuguese. You know the saying, make yourself at home? Well, in Portugal, that no longer applies even to the Portuguese. The country has become a rented scenario, and those who were born here are being kicked out. Simply walk through places like Ericeira, Cascais, and the Algarve areas, once teeming with fishermen, humble families, and elderly people playing dominoes in the town square. Today, it's concept stores, organic coffee, and digital nomads on Zoom. A 100-square-meter apartment for 440,000 euros, a latte for 4 euros. Renting a 2-bedroom apartment during the summer? Forget about it. It's only possible in the winter, and even then, it's a stretch. And the Portuguese themselves? They've left. They are expelled from their own street, their own neighborhood, their own city. There are empty buildings in downtown Lisbon and Portuguese people sleeping in their cars on the outskirts. There are 34-year-olds still living with their parents because they have nowhere else to go. There are 721,000 empty houses in the country, and still, people are sleeping on the streets. It's the Portuguese paradox. There are houses, but no housing, because the houses became safes. They're just sitting there like gold bars waiting to appreciate. Better to leave them closed than to rent them cheaply to a local worker. This is Portugal today, a country where housing has become a privilege. And when housing becomes a privilege, those born here become tourists in their own land. Or worse, they become invisible. Wait a minute. 721,000 houses are empty, and yet there are people sleeping in their cars? Do this. Send this video now to your friend who keeps saying that Portugal is a paradise. He must definitely see this before taking any action whatsoever. 6. The illusion of quality of life. Then you ask me, but if everything is so expensive, why are there still so many Brazilians going to Portugal? Simple. Because at least here you can walk on the street without fear. Someone looks at Brazil and sees violence, robbery, and insecurity, thinking, okay, I'll pay a lot, but I'll have peace. But this peace comes at a very high price. There are Brazilians living in rooms with 3 strangers. There are people sharing apartments with 2 families. There's a story of someone who arrived here with 750 euros in his pocket and ended up living in his car for 9 months. Yes, living in a car. He worked by day, ate at the restaurant where he was employed, and slept in the back of his car. This is the quality of life that no one ever reveals. Portugal can be peaceful, yes, but for those who already arrive with money, for those who come with a European salary, or for those who are retired and just want peace and quiet. Now, for those who come to try to make a life, it's one blow after another. You need to pay 4,000 euros just to rent an apartment 2 months up front, plus a 2-month security deposit. That's almost 30,000 reais just to get in. And many people come from Brazil without this money, thinking they'll sort everything out with the minimum wage here. Spoiler, they won't. So, what happens? They accept anything. They share a house, work twice as hard, and live on the bare minimum. And yet, many still assert that it's truly worth the effort, because ultimately, nobody here will rob you. But is living in cramped conditions, without privacy, and fearing eviction, truly freedom? Or is it just another form of imprisonment, with a view of the Tagus? 7. Who can still afford to live in Portugal? Today, there are 2 Portugals. The first is the Portugal of survival, of the people who earn less than 1,000 euros a month, take crowded transport, work 10 hours a day, share a flat with strangers, and still give half their salary to rent. This is the Portugal of sacrifice, of you can live, but barely. Better than Brazil, but far from a good life. And then there's the second Portugal, the Portugal of 3,000 euros a month, for the people who came with a European passport, work remotely for strong dollars or euros, and live like kings. They live alone, eat out, travel around Europe on weekends. They live well, very well. The question is, which Portugal will you fall into? Because if you arrive with the illusion that you'll make a life here without preparation, money, or strategy, your chances of falling into the first one are exceedingly high. And the most tragic part is seeing that those born here are trapped in the first Portugal, while foreign rich live in the second, enjoying every privilege. The country has become a showcase of opportunities, but only for those looking from the outside. For those on the inside, it's just a distorted reflection of a country that promised a quality of life, but delivered a bill the people can't afford to pay. 8. The real estate collapse. Now brace yourself for this. From 2015 to the present, real estate values in Portugal have increased by 137% and rental costs by 65%. In Lisbon alone, the square meter reached more than 10 euros. Does that seem low? Do the math. An 80 square meter 2-bedroom apartment already hits 800 a month. And mind you, that's on the cheap side. Some people are paying 1,800 for a moldy studio apartment. And do you know what the minimum wage is in Portugal? It's 820 euros. So, the rent is actually worth more than the salary itself. You work an entire month just to sleep poorly. In the city of Évora, for instance, rent prices increased by 127% within a single year. And even during the pandemic, when everything closed, house prices rose 8.4%. Not even the virus could stop the speculation. Then the people exploded. Then came 2023, and Portugal saw the biggest protest in its history. Lisbon, Porto, Braga, Faro, thousands in the streets screaming for the right to live. It wasn't against the government, but the absurd logic of a country selling everything to outsiders while expelling its residents. Housing became a luxury, and the people became intruders. The country that once sold dreams now delivers a nightmare with a signed contract. 9. The government's solutions. Faced with pressure on the streets and a real estate bomb about to explode, the Portuguese government finally reacted. In 2023, they announced a €900 million package to resolve the housing crisis. And do you know what they ended up doing? They put an end to new Airbnb licenses, abolished the golden visa, and pledged to make vacant homes available on the rental market. Wow, applause? But there's a catch. It all came late, very late. The houses had already been sold, prices were already incredibly high, and the daily life of the typical Portuguese person stayed precisely the same. The rule to limit the increase of rents to just 2% was truly a shot in the foot. So what did the property owners do? They terminated the current contracts to create new ones, with even higher values. The government tried to control the market by decree, and the market responded with evictions. Oh, and about those empty houses? They had promised to rent them for 5 years and then put them back on the market. But in reality, not much came of it. And still, most of the incentives went to those who already owned property, not to those who had nowhere to live. They took from the state to give to the investor again. And so I ask you, how do you solve a problem? By rewarding the one who caused it? The measures were called minimal and symbolic, even by the activists themselves. In other words, Portugal tried to put out a fire with a water spray bottle, while the house, or rather, the country, was on fire. 10. The real invisible enemy. Do you want to know what the real problem is? It's not just foreigners, not just the government, not just Airbnb. It's the rotten logic that turned a house into an investment. Property became a safe, and housing became a luxury. Currently, Portugal has over 720,000 empty houses. In Lisbon alone, there are 160,000 of them. Now brace yourself. The country has about 9,000 homeless people. That's almost 80 empty houses for every person without a place to sleep. You heard right, 80 for each one. But these houses are not on the market, not for rent, not for sale. They're just sitting there, hidden, appreciating in value. Why? For owners, it's more advantageous to leave them vacant than to rent them at a fair price. Better to hoard property than to provide shelter. These houses are mere currency, not true homes. And that, my friend, is what inflates the market. Supply exists, but it's not for those in need. Meanwhile, workers live in shacks, families in tiny rooms, young people share apartments with strangers, and even employed individuals are sleeping on the streets. Portugal has turned into a country where having a place to live no longer depends on work, but rather on luck, inheritance, or a European visa. This is the most vile part of the system. It's not just a crisis, it's cold speculation. It's capitalism at its most cynical. Bricks are worth more than people. 11. Immigration that worsens the situation. Now for the delicate part, immigration. Because this is the one topic no one wants to touch, but let's discuss it like adults. Portugal has become a destination not only for European retirees and digital nomads, but also for a huge mass of economic immigrants. Brazilians, Africans, Indians, Pakistanis, Nepalese, hard-working people seeking opportunity. Many came with their entire lives in a backpack, prepared to accept any job, no matter the pay. The outcome? Inexpensive labor became the standard. Employers started paying less. Rent prices soared. The market then conformed to this bare minimum logic. And who truly bears the brunt of all this? The Portuguese, the Brazilian who is already settled, the old immigrant. Everyone who already lived here needs to survive on what they earn. There are neighborhoods in Lisbon where the Portuguese are a minority. In Braga, some people reported entering a restaurant and being forced to speak English because the server there didn't speak Portuguese. Is this considered integration or substitution? And before anyone screams xenophobia, calm down. The problem isn't the immigrant. The problem is the system that pits poor against poor, exploited against exploited. And yes, there are serious reports. Groups of men walking together, staring at women on public transport. Cases of harassment, insecurity. Brazilians, Portuguese, and even tourists report this. Does every immigrant pose a problem? No, of course not. But ignoring cultural conflicts is a recipe for disaster. Portugal opened up indiscriminately, without integration and without limits. Now it pays the price for excessive political correctness. One can be in favor of immigration and yet still advocate for security, employment, and local culture. Because otherwise, my friend, it's no longer welcoming, it's abandonment. 12. The future of Portugal. So, where does Portugal go? After numerous protests, the government abolished the golden visa, placed restrictions on Airbnb, and vowed to lease vacant homes. But what happened? Practically nothing changed. Prices remain inflated. Demand continues to outstrip supply, and wages are stuck in the Middle Ages. The truth is, the country got hooked on tourism, foreign investment, and broken promises. Portugal today appears beautiful on the cover, but within, it conceals torn pages. What actions could bring about change? Constructing more homes? Yes, though that requires time. Expanding the public housing stock? Absolutely. However, currently, only 2% of properties are social housing, while 30% are in nations such as France and Austria. Lowering taxes for initial home buyers? That's a good concept, but where's the political determination? Portugal must make a decision. Will it keep catering to foreign arrivals? Or will it finally take care of those who are already here? Because what we're seeing isn't just a crisis. It's a symptom of an emptying of identity, of a nation. And if no action is taken now, in 20 years, Portugal may still be on the map, but it might no longer truly belong to the Portuguese. Now answer me this one question truthfully. Would you agree to give up 63% of your wages just to have a place to sleep? And what's more, with everything you've seen here, would you still live in Portugal today? Comment below. I want to know your opinion. And if this video has opened your eyes, then please share it with someone who is still daydreaming about this paradise. Oh, and don't forget to check out the video that's appearing there on your screen. Thanks everyone, and see you all next time.